And there were a lot of, I noticed, disturbing stories in there. There were a lot of crowd scenes too. The crowds were always amazed when Jesus would spend time with them and speak to them. They were always amazed. And they even said, and maybe they had to be very selective who they said it around, but they even said, he doesn't speak to us like our normal teachers do. He really held their attention. Among other things, he was not like the usual run-of-the-mill. Well, how was he different? Well, let me tell you how he was alike. He was alike all those other teachers that they were familiar with in that he used a lot of stories. Again, you find that in Matthew, a lot of stories. He used them very much, and the others used them a lot. But he did something different. It's what he paired his stories with. He used what we call parables. It's from a compound word in Greek that means to lay one thing alongside another. It was that kind of story, a comparison story. And he used parables and he used miracles. And he used miracles and he used parables. He always put them together, and when you think about it, they complement each other very well. Because the miracles were really his parables in action, because these miracles weren't just parlor tricks. He was always trying to show them something, open their eyes, teach them something, expand their horizons with his miracles. So his miracles are parables in action, but his parables are miracles in words. Nobody spoke like he did. And that's why the crowds were so amazed when he would tell one of his stories. Again, those crowds so amazed. He was so different. Sometimes he told stories that were very similar to what the others told, but always with a twist. Crowds were amazed because of that twist. He was different in that way. How was he different? Well, you always knew when Jesus told you a story what he thought. When the others told stories, and Jesus even referenced it in the Sermon on the Mount, he said, the old-time teachers said to you thus and such, but I say to you. You always knew what Jesus thought at the end of a story. There was no quibbling about it. He made himself very clear. That was one way he was different, but there was another way you couldn't turn away. You couldn't turn away when Jesus told a story. He was captivating, wildly captivating. When he spun out a story, it was always something that held your attention. It riveted you in place. And he did it with vivid details and strange characters. When he spun out a story, you stayed in place because of all of that. But also, he used all of this over-the-top language. He exaggerated, sometimes to the point that it was laughable. He said things that bordered on the ridiculous and that went beyond the impossible. And nobody could walk out. Even if it nailed you and the punchline, when it came out of nowhere, it slapped you in the face. And you realized, hey, he's talking about me. But even then, you couldn't walk away. Now, we're in Matthew 22 today. And you'll very likely later this week, maybe later today, in a quiet moment, go back and want to take a look at this story. It's in Matthew 22. And you'll read this later on, and you'll wonder, because you'll read beyond our story into another little snippet of a story that's very short, but more disturbing than the one we're going to look at. So let me just tell you about that follow-up story, even though it's not a part of what we're doing today. It's in Matthew 22, verses 11 through 14, and it involves a man. We're talking about a great wedding feast. And finally, the feast gets underway after some unfortunate delays that we'll look at. But it finally begins, and it's rolling along just wonderfully. Guests are coming. And everybody's happy and it's festive. And one guy comes in wearing his work clothes. And he is unceremoniously bum-rushed out of there. He's thrown out of the feast. And again, I told you these stories are over the top. And to make sure that you know he's been thrown out and he's never going to be allowed back in, he's told, they tell the servants, bind this guy, this one who came in his work clothes. Bind him hand, foot, throw him into the outer darkness where there is weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. We got good and rid of him. Well, we read that story in our day and we think, how cruel. Just because the guy didn't have the right clothes? What's going on here? Here's what's going on. In those days when you threw a wedding feast like this, an event of the year, you think weddings cost a lot now. They were very expensive, and part of what you provided if you put on the wedding was fancy clothes for all the guests. You paid for that too. If they couldn't afford it, you paid for it. In fact, you had them at the door so that they walked in their work clothes, they could change out and look as nice as the nicest person there. This guy had walked past the clothes racks. He'd taken a pass and he had walked in to the feast where everything was provided for him. Everything was lavish. Everything was there. He didn't have to do anything. In fact, he didn't even have to worry about his clothing. He came in where all was provided. And he walks in with this incredible arrogance and says, in effect, take me as I am, knowing that that's not the way things worked at these weddings. He walked in with arrogance. He presumed too much. And there's a message there that's not our message today, but it's be careful. Be careful. We come in. We hear God's invitation. And we may be dirty, but we don't have to come in with a swagger. And we don't have to come in saying, I don't need to change my clothes. There's nothing about me that needs to be changed. The king invited me, and that's good enough. Don't expect me to alter anything. Be very careful with that approach. We've all got dirty clothes. Well, that's not our story today. There's a bigger story, so let's get back to it. It goes something like this. This king, and who has more money than kings? His son has been married, and he wants to throw a great feast in honor of that event. And so he sends out invitations well in advance of the feast to all the best people, so that if they have the clothes, they can prepare. He sends out the invitation to all the best people around. Now, there was a thing about wedding feasts in those days. You knew the day of the feast, but you didn't know quite the time. They didn't have an invitation that explained the hour. And it was for this reason, because the preparation, you weren't quite sure how it was going to go. It may take longer, it may be shorter. The food, it took time because you didn't prepare it like we prepare food. So there was a little bit of guesswork involved, and for that reason, you didn't know always the exact time because the food might take longer than expected, and they didn't do what we do, like they do on the cooking shows. All right, chefs, you've got 20 minutes. And then you've got some blonde English loudmouth yelling and screaming at everybody, and everybody's nervous and upset to get it to the table on time. It wasn't like that. It's we get it done when we get it done. And then, for all those important people that were invited, they would send out their own private inviter who would say, it's ready. And then you'd come. Well, that's exactly what happened with this great banquet. Everything was ready. Everything had been laid out. Now, this story, it resonates. In every culture, there are banquets and feasts. But this is a very Jewish idea here. You probably figured out already that the king is really God. And it's a very Jewish idea that God would throw a feast. But the Bible talks us about things like that, the marriage supper of the Lamb, so on. And it's telling us that entering the kingdom of God, that place where the king is in charge, it is kind of like a beautiful banquet where everything is a celebration. And entering the kingdom is fun-filled. And it's a joyous feast. And we would do good to remember that. That that's what this thing is like. So he sends out the emissaries, and they invite all the best people that have been invited well in advance. And a peculiar thing happens. And here's where Jesus' story takes a strange turn. They don't want to come. The word says they're unwilling to come. The slaves go out and they call all those that have been invited to the wedding feast, and they were unwilling to come. I don't want to go. It's the event of the year. To have an invitation to that event, that was a golden ticket from the king. And only the best people got it. And those best people invited, when it comes time, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Now, when Luke tells this story, he gives a little more information. He says that excuses begin to pour in from the unwilling. And one fellow says, well, you know, I can't come because I bought a piece of property and I've got to go look at it. Who's dumb enough to buy a piece of land without looking at it first? But apparently he did. So there's somebody who's concerned about acquiring things and literally property. Somebody else says, well, I can't come because I've got a new set of oxen and I need to test them out. I just bought a car and I need to test drive it again. That sounds a little fishy. Third fellow, he says, it's family issues for me. I've married a wife. He doesn't say if that's a good thing or a bad thing in his case, but it's the case, and doesn't say he's got to test drive her, but for some reason that's going to keep him from coming. It's a family thing. And those are things that people use as excuses today for why they don't get more involved in the things of God. Well, I've got business to take care of. Or there's a novelty, the next new thing, I've got to check that out. Or family, and family is a valuable thing. But we've got to be careful with all of those things, don't we? Even good things can get in the way of the things of God. And so they all beg off. So he sends somebody else. Surely you're not going to diss me on the feast of the year. Everybody wants to come. So he sends another series of servants to re-invite them, to remind them. In fact, they urge and they say, everything is ready. They even lay out the menu. He says, tell them I've prepared my dinner. It's on the table. It's ready to be served. I've got the oxen ready and the fat calf. The best of my livestock has all been butchered and prepared. Everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. It says they paid no attention to this second round. And they went on their way about whatever it is they wanted to do. Now, it seems pretty clear at this point that it's not laziness that keeps them away. They paid no attention. They went their way, one to his farm, another to his business. And some of those invited guests that got the second invitation, they seize the servants that come to remind them and beat them. And some of them, after they seize them and beat them, there are a few cases where they kill them. Now, this is what I mean when I said when Jesus tells a story, it's over the top. You think it's over the top already? They beat the messengers, detain them, beat them, kill them. It's going to get worse. If that enrages you, watch what happens next. The king now, when he gets these reports, what they've done to my servants, He's enraged. To the point that he says, this will not stand. And he's a king, remember? He's got an army. And he sends an army, Jesus says, and he destroys those murderers. But that's not good enough. Kill them and burn their city down. That's how mad I am. I think Jesus got carried away with the vivid details here, and he kind of stepped on his own story. They just burned down the city that the wedding feast is supposed to be in. I told you, it's exaggerated. And so that happens. And then he says to the slaves, what are we going to do? The feast is ready. And those that we invited, they're not worthy. And it's very clear that it wasn't a case of laziness on their part, it's hostility. They're hostile. That's why they beat the servants and killed some of them. They're not lazy, that's not their excuse. They've got a problem with the king. So he says, go into the main highways then, where you're going to find a lot of people of every stripe. And whoever you find there, invite them to the wedding feast. So the slaves went out into the streets, the alleyways. And whoever they found, the bad ones and the good ones, they invited them into the wedding hall. And when they're finished inviting, the king looks around pleased because the wedding hall is filled. It's full. He had widened the circle, and it's full. Well, what's going on here? What's going on? Entering the kingdom is like a fun-filled feast. Good to remember that. On Sunday at 6 o'clock, we do our Zoom Bible study, and one of the things we've been learning to do is to be good exegetes. That's a Greek word. You could have guessed that, and you probably see the word exit, to get out, in that word, and it's there, ex. To exegete a passage, a story, a parable, one of these parables that's a miracle in words. To exegete that passage means you are very careful not to force something into it. People do that a lot with the Bible. I don't know if you've noticed that. They make it say what they want to say. And you can do that. The Bible is just that flexible on purpose that you can make it say just about anything you want to. If you wanted to, you could make a case for God being a big chicken. Many of you, your favorite passage is Psalm 91. It talks about hiding under the shelter of the Most High, and I'm hidden under the wings of God, and His feathers are my shelter. God is a big chicken. See? Well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to force anything into what the Bible says. We want to pull something out, and that's what an exegete does. So let's take a look at what we can take out of this wildly exaggerated, entertaining, no doubt, never going to happen story. Never did happen, never going to happen. What can we pull out of it? You know, if we focus on just 2 verses, 9 and 10, if you're following along, if we focus just on those 2 verses, I think it will become very apparent, and it couldn't be simpler, and you probably already see it, that everything starts with go. Everything in our relationship with God starts with go. Most especially how He wants us to relate to other people that don't know Christ. It starts with go. What does the king say? Go, therefore, to the main highways. My house isn't full yet. The circle isn't wide enough yet. I'm trying to expand this thing, and I want you to go. Everything starts with go, you see. Remember the story of Jesus? He was out all day long with His apprentices and doing all sorts of good things. They decide to go back to Simon Peter's house for the evening. They're going to stay there. In fact, the way the book of Mark says it, Jesus was going home. In his mind, He was going home. Well, What that tells you is it wasn't his house. He didn't have the deed to it. It didn't belong to his father or his family. It belonged to Simon. Simon was the owner. Simon had paid the mortgage. But Jesus says, that's my home. It tells you you get involved with Jesus, your stuff becomes his stuff. Hold on to it lightly. He might just want it. They went back home. And as they go in the front door, they're met with an awful sight. Simon's mother-in-law is sick, laying there on some kind of a pallet, bed, couch, with a high fever. To touch her is to burn your hand. She's burning up with fever. And Jesus goes over to her and he speaks to her. He bends over her and he heals her. And immediately, when Mark tells the story, he uses the word immediately. She gets up. And not only is she restored and healed, but she immediately says, all you boys sit down, I'm going to make dinner. And she cooks something good up and serves it to them. The point is, you're saved to serve. You're not saved to sit. There's somewhere God wants you to go. There's something he wants you to be involved in, something he wants you to do. There's somebody that needs what you've got, you see. And you got to go and tell them and invite them, just like these people were invited. There are people that need what you've got. I'm beginning to realize with greater force than ever how badly people need a good church. 5 weeks ago, Elaine, when she spoke, talked about our church, and she said, this is the perfect church for me. I like that. And it's the perfect church for you too. And it very well may be the perfect church for somebody that you work with, or somebody in your family, or one of your neighbors, or some acquaintance or something. It may be that this is exactly what they need too. Yeah, I'm realizing how badly people need a good church. Maybe for your friend or your co-worker or family. But the point is, it starts with you. If they're going to be here, you've got to invite them. It starts with you hearing and responding to the Lord's go. God's telling you to go and tell somebody. God's telling you to go and invite somebody. Everything starts with go. And then what else this story will teach us if we'll let it? Just ask. What do I do when I go? When I get there, what do I do? Just ask. Just ask them. Hey, friend, do you have a home church? Come and sit with me. Or you can invite them to one of the other things that we do all the time. Tuesday night, or Zoom, or AMA, or whatever. There's so many things. Maybe they want to come and help pass out food. Maybe they'd like to come to the ladies group or bring their kid to one of the kid programs. Just ask. It's as simple as asking. That's what Jesus is asking you to do. Just extend an invitation. We've got invitation cards back there, in fact. All you got to do is take one of those and say, hey, I found a good thing. And that constitutes an ask. Just ask. Now, will people give excuses? Some will. But let me tell you what I've discovered about excuses. When we extend an invitation to somebody, to the things of God, to come to our church, to attend the men's breakfast, whatever it might be, and they take a pass, that's evidence of something. It's evidence of a life that's out of proportion. And that should disturb us. We ask somebody and they say no. They won't even consider it. That's evidence that their life is out of proportion. In other words, they are so distracted with activities that there's no space left for the unseen and the eternal. They're so glued to what's happening right in front of their face that they can't think about the things that are really important. Those things get crowded out. Badly proportioned life is a curse, really, to live like that. Because something is always going to be missing no matter what they do accomplish or acquire. Like the man with the oxen, no matter how many new things they experience, novelty, there's something always going to be missing in a life that's out of proportion. They may worry about duty or novelty or the demands of home, like the guy who had married a wife. Home is important for sure, but it is possible to take too selfish a view of it. Even good things can come between you and Christ. Here's my point. I really want you to see the sadness of those who need what you've got. You ask, you invite, and they turn you down. But the invitation, the asking is so simple. Just ask. Just ask. Jesus says that if we gather in His name, He comes and He sits with us. And you can say that to your friend, hey, come with me, sit with me on Sunday morning. Study with me, the Zoom study. Watch the Thursday night live stream. But when you ask, do it with intention. But that's all it is, just ask. And don't be too picky. I notice the story reinforces that idea as well. The call goes out from the king. Well, those others wouldn't come. They were wicked. Again, not laziness, but hostility. And he says, go out into the streets. And whoever you find, evil and good, bring them in here. Don't be too picky. The people you ask, there's times that we hesitate to ask somebody, to extend somebody an invitation to come to church or talk about the Lord or let me pray with you, because we think, oh, that person, they would never, ever. And so some people for us are out of consideration. It ought not be like that. We ought not say to ourselves, they're not the kind that would want to hear this. Don't be too picky. The good and the bad. Remember another parable that involved a broadcaster? We call it the parable of the soils or the sower. And a guy is throwing his seed indiscriminately. And some of it lands on the hard pack and some in the thorns. And some lands in the rocks. Some lands in the good soil. But he's none too careful about the way he distributes that seed. He just throws it out there. It's called broadcasting. That's where we get the word, broadcasting. And he doesn't target just the good land. He throws it wherever. He gives everybody a chance. That's the way we should be. That's the way we should be. You can invite somebody to Sunday. There's so much that you could invite them to. Tuesday night, our Zoom time, our men's breakfast. Invite them to watch the live stream on Thursday or come to the recovery group. Or maybe they have a bent, they want to pass out food and help people that need help. So they could come on Wednesday morning maybe and do that. Maybe they've got boys, they could bring their boys or their girls or come to the ladies' brunch. There's so many things. There's no shortage of things that you could invite. But I got to tell you, the power is in the potential. Jesus talked about mustard seeds, tiny mustard seeds. They grow up and they become something that to the uneducated you would take for a tree, and so do the birds because they nest in it. But it starts from a teeny tiny seed. The power of you asking is in the potential. I remember a whole bunch of years ago, I was 14 years old. Oh my gosh. Where'd my life go? I still feel like I'm 14. I still get the heebie-jeebies around principals and cops. But when I was about that old, some men knocked on our door, men from a church. At this church where they had a Boy Scout program, and my brothers and I, we were part of that, and these men were the scout leaders, and they come and they knocked on our door. What we didn't know is they were also committed to Christ. And they used that as an outreach. They would go visit their boys' families and invite people to church. And they invited us to church on an Easter. And that's when my family, that had been badly soured on the whole idea of church, started going. And it took a while because I'm thick. But by the time I was 21, I'd embraced Christ. Wouldn't have happened had those men not asked, you see. So don't be too picky who you ask. Just ask. And then look what happens. Verse 10. And the wedding hall was filled. It works. If you ask, some will come. Some will respond. Some will watch that Ask Us Anything on Thursday. Some may come to the men's breakfast or whatever it might be. Look what happens when you ask. The house is full, it says. The circle is complete. Every runaway came back home. The good, the bad, they're all in the house now. And God is there, and He's surrounded. He's in the midst. Jesus' words, and He's very, very happy. When Chris took a shot at our topic, what do you hear God saying to our church for this year, he did an excellent summary. I don't know if you noticed that. I did. He did an excellent summary of all four of the speakers last month. But do you realize what each of those people were saying to us? They all had a common message. Do you realize what they were all saying we're a part of? Elaine talked about kids. Tino talked about being deeply rooted and going deeper in your walk with Christ. And Dwayne about holiness. What a message we need to hear. Chris talked about active grace. But did you catch what they were all saying that we're a part of? Jesus said something toward the very end of His days on earth. He had His friends together, and He talked about a chain, an unbroken chain of obedience when He said, as the Father has sent me, I'm sending you. That word sent is the word we get the word apostle from. An apostle is one who has been sent. And in that verse we see the apostolic heart of the Father. As the Father has sent me, I'm sending you. And we see the apostolic heart of Christ. And we should have an apostolic heart. We should go. Why? Because Jesus went and the Father sent. And we're in that line, unbroken line of obedience if we go. Don't break the chain. The Father, the Son, now you and me. You see? That's what we're part of. That word that we get our word apostle from, there's a more familiar word in Latin. It's missio, mission. You see the missionary heart of the Father. He sends Christ. And the missionary heart of Christ, He sends us. We go and we ask. And we're not too picky about it, about whom we ask. But what are you inviting people to? Remember the story? It's a feast. It's not a duty. It's not a drudge. It's not a to-do list. This is a feast. This is a privilege. Those people that were asked at the end of the story, they were not the best people in town. They could not believe their good fortune that they're going to the banquet of a king. But that's what we're inviting people to, you see. You know, as you read through the Bible this year, and I sincerely hope you'll use that Bible reading calendar. If you haven't started on it, started on it. If you started on it and got fouled up, don't feel like you got to go back and read a whole month's worth. Start today. But as you're reading through the Word this year, don't get very far from the idea of Eden, our first home, the perfect place. You see, there's a phrase in the Word that shows up over and over again that's a tell. We should pay attention to it. It's the phrase, it even gets into the Lord's Prayer. On earth as in heaven. As in heaven, so on earth. What it means is, it's talking about a pattern. That God has something in heaven He wants duplicated on earth. He's got a home in heaven. He wants a home on earth. He's got a family in heaven. He wants a family on earth. He's in the middle of all the activity up there. He wants to be in the middle of it here. And so He made Eden. And He put our parents in it. Of course, we know they messed up. When you see Adam, don't be too hard on him. Don't beat him up. You would have done the same thing. That's the point. But they were kicked out and they couldn't go back. There was no going back until Jesus. Well, Eden is so important. And as you read the Word, don't get too far from the whole idea of Eden, because Eden is lost at the beginning, but at the very end, Eden is restored. Paradise lost, paradise regained. That's what the new heavens and the new earth are all about. Creation starts again. The nations are healed. The ethne, the people groups, however you divide people, no more divisions. They're healed. Everything is beautiful. There's no night there. There's no crying there. There's no sorrow. There's no dying. There's no grief. There's no chaos. It's all gone. Eden is restored. Don't get too far from the idea of Eden in your reading of the Bible, because it's going to be restored someday. There is a reason why the church is called the family of God. Because again, the whole idea of Eden is that God will have on earth what He's got in heaven. He'll be in the middle of His family that He loves. You'll be there. He'll get what He wants, and that's what He wants. I think that's what Jesus had in mind when He said, you know, when you people gather, when we gather like this, Jesus promises, I'm in the middle of it. Where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there's more than 2 or 3 here. He said, I'm in the very middle of it. Just like God has always desired to be in the middle, surrounded by His family, Jesus is here, and He loves it. The church is to be a little like Eden, is the point. This is a little outpost of Eden, not perfect, because we're not. But it's a little like Eden because we're the family, and He's here. He's surrounded by us. And that's where He wants to be, and that's where we should want to be. Don't take your church family lightly. God doesn't. We're a little like Eden in His thinking. We're a little like Eden. Let me wrap up with this. Christ shows up when we gather. We should show up here in our little Eden. But let me wrap up with this. One day, it's going to be restored. And at the very end of the book of Revelation, when that restoration is all fleshed out, and as I said, it's perfect in every way, you get a voice saying, the Spirit says, come. The Holy Spirit, God, sends out an invitation to the whole universe. It's all prepared. Eden is restored. Now come. And it says something very curious. The Spirit and the bride say, come. You know who the bride is? You, me, all of us together. We're the bride of Christ. It's the wedding feast all over again. And we're not guests of honor. We're the bride. We're the family. And the end of the book says that you and me together are in concert with God in throwing out one last call for outreach and mission. Come! Come. And we don't have to wait till then. You can begin it today, tomorrow. The people you live around, work around, people you fuss with at work, people you shop with, your neighbors, your screwy relatives. And don't tell me you don't have any. We've all got them. You can invite all of them. You don't have to be picky. All you got to do is ask. Just ask. Let's stand together, can we? Lift your hands. God, how good you are.